Okay, this video is about approaching fallible religious constructs. This is number 2. But because these are somewhat the yin and yang of fallible religious constructs, I'll just go ahead and leave these together since they are Siamese, I suppose. First thing to do is when you approach one as you can, I would recommend, I certainly am only suggesting this based on approaches from hermeneutics, such as defining terms, documenting those terms. But when we say define the terms, for example, we know there's controversy here, free will. And then number 2, there's issues about word sovereignty, which who wants to question God's sovereignty? So let's take the first one, free will, and notice that when we say define the term, we're talking about defining it from the Bible. So in the first video, causal agency is taught. It's the causative stems in the Hebrew, biblical Hebrew language, that is. It's causative, active, causative, passive. And there's 2 states of action, complete and incomplete. And in both states, they have these 2 stems in the causative. There are 2 causative stems, 7 stems total. Well, neither does Calvinism nor Arminianism. So before you pick sides, which is certainly doesn't improve your condition, that is, if you're teaching the Bible, as I teach in a church, I don't teach in something that would give me an advantage to go along with something that I know is a fallible religious construct. There is no gain in just picking something. Picking between constructs is not searching the scriptures. So if you define this, it doesn't help either side that much, actually. It just gives you a Bible definition. And again, that controversy seems to be so many horrible things said if you do believe in free will, and then as many horrible things said if you don't believe in free will. So it's a very stressful, seems to be very ugly, a lot of negative energy there. Just without a definition from the Bible, it's hard to approach this construct in any serious way. If someone just simply is so biased and negatively charged emotionally, primed that is, then you're really not having a conversation. So when you teach it in this manner, and you follow your Hermeneutics 101, as I was well taught, just define your term, document it, place it in its contextual narratives, and then proceed to defend or apologize, give a rationale. Here, sovereignty, same way, a lot of contention people will say about this. It's another false argument about either the Bible does teach it or it doesn't teach it. Well, actually, the Bible teaches that God desires things, and He determines things. And each of those texts, this is Delema, and this is Boule. You say, well, I don't like those Greek words. I don't know why that's ever said. It makes no sense. It's almost as if people would rather continue the argument, which is based on instinct and undefined terms. Don't let the Bible get in the way of our fighting, because our flesh is built to negate. But if you don't like these little simple koine, commonly expressed words, but you can see why it doesn't change the fact that the Bible distinctly demonstrates God as one who desires and one who determines. And until we differentiate that, you can fall prey to everything is determinism or everything's desire. You fall into that trap of all form, no dynamic, or all dynamic and no form. And Paul talked about those who did that. And then third, of course, there's something that is ignored. Let's say omitted. I shouldn't say ignored. That would almost imply willful, but kind of action. When you discover there's a lot of discussion around birth before believe, and then of course B, let's say an Arminian would deny that. The problem is neither have talked about kind of action. The actual order in the New Testament, now I don't mean one that I advocate, certainly not one that I would somehow accredit myself for having developed. It's already formatted in the divinely constructed construct of the Scriptures. The gospel, the purpose of the gospel is for believe. That's punctular action. Punctular, just like a dot. And then of course birth precedes believing. And of course to English readers we'd say, well, that's no big deal. Well, it is a big deal in the Koine text. So in this case there's three things that were omitted that would help you approach Calvinism Arminianism, and might find you with both your Calvinist and your Arminian both as uncomfortable with how to include this because they've never considered it before. So a definition of free will that's actually from the Bible, which is causal agency. Neither Arminianism nor Calvinism teach that. Secondly, the distinction of God as the king, his kingship, which are the words in the Bible. Sovereignty, I believe, is a Latin term. But to distinguish that God does desire things and he determines things. Now go to the context, the contextualized narratives, and enjoy the conversation. You'll learn a lot about the Bible by doing this. And then third, just these three steps, not all, these are not exhaustive. Then include kind of action in the conversation, and your fallible religious construct, or constructs, actually they're so umbilical now, almost Siamese. The Calvin Arminian combo fallible religious construct will find great, it's a good challenge if you actually meet someone that wants to be challenged and enjoy the conversation and the fellowship. It'll be difficult. Most people that are primed are not usually so inclined or predisposed by the Spirit that God gives us to want to engage this learning. But number two, Calvinism and Arminianism, just those three steps would be quite sufficient to approach that construct.